The wind howled through the skeletal branches of the cottonwood trees, a mournful sound that carried the biting promise of a harsh winter. For Abner Thorne, the sound was a familiar companion. For 15 years, he had lived alone on his ranch, a solitary figure against the vast, unforgiving landscape. Grief had been his only real neighbor, a silent guest who never left. His heart, once full, had been hollowed out by the blizzard that had claimed his wife, Eleanor, and their young son, Samuel, leaving him to bear his sorrow in silence. But on this snowy Christmas Eve of 1881, something was about to shift. The town of Dust Devil Gulch flickered below his ranch, a small cluster of lights against the encroaching darkness. Abner guided his horse down the familiar path, his mind only on the supplies he needed. He had no time for the false cheer of the holiday, a painful reminder of the family he had lost. He tied his horse near the saloon, the sound of strained carols leaking through the doors. He preferred the back alley, a place to conduct his business with Frank, the owner, without the need for pleasantries. It was there, in the deep shadows between buildings, that he saw her. A small figure, no older than 7, was crouched by the trash barrels. She wore a tattered brown prairie dress, wholly inadequate for the freezing temperatures, and her straight, black hair was matted with grime. She was thin and shivering, her small hands digging through the saloon's refuse with a desperate focus. At first, Abner considered turning away. The world was full of problems, and he had long ago decided they were not his to solve. But something in the girl's quiet determination stopped him. "Child," he said, his voice a low rumble, rough from disuse. She flinched, her dark eyes, almond-shaped and startlingly old, snapping up to meet his. She held a stale crust of bread to her chest as if it were treasure, a defiant fear in her gaze. "I'm not hurting anything," she whispered. "Mr. Frank said I could have the scraps." A crack formed in the ice around Abner's heart. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone softer now. She replied, her voice barely audible over the wind. She watched him with a weariness that didn't belong on a child's face. "What are you doing out here alone, my? Where are your folks?" Her lower lip trembled. "My mama, she got the fever. She's with the ancestors now." She clutched a small, tarnished object hanging from a string around her neck. "Before she died, she told me to come here. She said I had to find my grandfather. She said his name was Abner Thorne." The world tilted on its axis. The wind, the snow, the distant music from the saloon, it all faded to a dull roar in his ears. "Thorne." She had said Thorne. His throat went dry. My son was Samuel Thorne," he managed to say. "He died 15 years ago. In the blizzard." Shook her head, her dark eyes certain. "Mama said my father was Samuel. He died before I was born, in a mine collapse." But he told her everything about this place. About the ranch, and about his father who was sad, but good. She held out the object from around her neck. It was a small, brass compass. With a trembling hand, Abner took it. He turned it over and saw the familiar inscription he had carved himself so many years ago, "Find your way home, St. Samuel." His son had survived the blizzard. He had lived, had married, had fathered a child. And Abner had never known. The grief he had carried for 15 years was suddenly twisted with a new, sharper pain, the agony of lost time. He staggered back, his hand braced against the cold brick of the saloon. "Are you all right, mister?" Asked, her voice laced with concern. "You're him, aren't you?" she said, her tone soft but steady. "You're my grandpa Abner." He could only nod, the simple word a dam breaking inside him, unleashing a flood of emotions he had suppressed for years. He had a granddaughter. A piece of his son, a piece of his lost family, was standing right here in the snow. "You're cold," Abner said, his voice thick. And hungry, he made a decision that both terrified and electrified him. "Come with me. There's a storm coming, and you need shelter." "Are you sure?" she asked, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I don't eat much. I can help. Mama taught me how to mend and clean. I'm sure, Abner said, the word feeling foreign but right. He hadn't shared his home with another soul in 15 years, but this was not just another soul. This was his blood. He led her into the saloon's back room, where Frank and Doc Finch were sharing a quiet drink. Both men stared as Abner entered with the small, shivering girl. Abner, Doc Finch said, his physician's eye immediately taking in Mai's condition. Who is this? This is Mai, Abner said, his voice still unsteady. She's my granddaughter. The climb to the ranch was slow, the snow now falling thick and fast. My small hand in his was a strange and wonderful weight. The cabin, when they finally reached it, was warm and clean but starkly empty, a space designed for function, not comfort. Abner built up the fire while Mai looked around, her observant eyes missing nothing. You have many books, she noted, pointing to the small shelf in the corner. But no pictures. The observation was painfully accurate. He had purged the space of anything that would remind him of his past. Changing the subject, he prepared a simple meal of stew and fresh bread. As they ate, he found himself asking about her mother, Lynn, and the father she had never known. Mama said he was a good man, Mai said. He worked for the railroad after he left here. He met my mama in a settlement town in California. He wrote her letters before they were married. He told her he wanted to make peace with his father someday. The words were like a physical blow. Samuel had wanted to reconcile, and Abner, lost in his fortress of grief, had never given him the chance. As Mai explored the small cabin, she found a hand-carved wooden horse on a dusty shelf in the storage room. Oh, she breathed, her small hands reaching for it reverently. It's beautiful. Abner's throat tightened. I made that. For your father, for his 5th birthday. Mai held the horse as if it were a sacred relic, a tangible link to the father she never met. Tell me about him, she whispered. And so, for the first time in years, Abner spoke of his son. He shared stories of Samuel's endless curiosity, his stubborn pride, and his fascination with the stars. Watching Mai listen, her face illuminated by the firelight, he saw that the memories brought not just pain, but a gentle warmth he had long forgotten. Why did you stay away from everyone for so long? She asked, with the directness only a child possesses. Was it because it hurt too much to remember? Yes, he admitted, the truth stark and simple. I thought being alone was easier than risking that kind of pain again. But you weren't really alone, Mai said with startling clarity. You were just lonely. Her words struck him with the force of a revelation. He had chosen isolation as a shield, but it had also been a prison. This child, this unexpected gift, was offering him a key. A few days after Christmas, Abner took Mai to see Doc Finch for a proper checkup. The doctor confirmed she was undernourished but fundamentally healthy. While there, Mai spoke of her mother's life. Lynn had worked as a laundress for Alastair Blackwood, the wealthiest man in Dust Devil Gulch. Mama saved every penny, Mai explained, her expression serious. She kept it in a tin box and gave it to Mr. Blackwood to keep safe for her. For my education. But after she passed, he told me there was nothing left. He said Mama had debts for rent and medicine that used up all the money. That doesn't sound right, Abner said, a cold anger beginning to smolder in his chest. Lynn had been frugal and careful. He had seen enough of the world to recognize the scent of a predator taking advantage of the vulnerable. He was always very polite when Mama was alive, Mai added. But after she died, he just seemed eager to be rid of me. That settled it. For 15 years, Abner had felt nothing but the dull ache of grief. Now, a different fire was lit within him, the righteous anger of a man protecting his family. We are going to pay Mr. Blackwood a visit, he told Mai. Family looks out for each other. Alastair Blackwood's office was a testament to his wealth and influence, with a large mahogany desk and thick carpets that muffled all sound. He was a portly man with a practiced, charming smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. Mr. Thorne, he said, feigning surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure? I heard you'd taken in the poor Chinese girl. A charitable act. I'm here about her mother's savings, Abner said, cutting straight to the point. Sheriff Brody stood quietly by the door, his presence a silent statement of authority. "My tells me her mother, Lynn, entrusted you with her money." Blackwood's smile tightened. "A tragic situation. I'm afraid after settling her debts, back rent, medical bills, there was nothing left. In fact, her expenses exceeded her savings. I was generous enough to absorb the loss myself." "That's odd," Abner replied, his voice calm but hard as iron. "Because Lynn was a meticulous woman. She kept a record of her savings." He produced a small, worn ledger from his coat pocket. "I held on to this. It shows weekly deposits and a running total of nearly $200. It does not show any debts." The color drained from Blackwood's face. "Ledgers can be misleading. As I said, there were significant expenses." "Forged expenses, I imagine," Abner pressed on. "We've spoken with Doc Finch. He treated Lynn out of kindness and charged her nothing. And the landlord of the boarding house where she lived confirmed her rent was paid in full before she passed. So, you'll forgive me for asking, Mr. Blackwood, but where are these debts you speak of?" Sheriff Brody stepped forward. "Alastair, this looks bad. Stealing from a dying woman, cheating her orphan child. The folks in this town won't take kindly to that. The railroad men who knew her husband won't take kindly to it either." Blackwood sputtered, his composure finally cracking. He looked from Abner's unyielding face to the sheriff's stern expression and knew he was cornered. The carefully constructed facade of the benevolent town patriarch crumbled, revealing the greedy man beneath. "This is a misunderstanding," he blustered. "No," Abner said, his voice low and dangerous. "The misunderstanding was yours. You thought that little girl had no one to protect her. You were wrong." Defeated, Blackwood retrieved a cash box from his safe and counted out the money, his hands shaking with fury. He pushed the stack of bills across the desk. Abner took the money, but he wasn't finished. "You will also make a sizable donation to the church fund for widows and orphans," Sheriff Brody added. "A show of your remorse for this terrible misunderstanding." As they walked out of the office and into the clean winter air, Abner felt a grim satisfaction. It wasn't just about the money. It was about justice. For the first time in 15 years, he had fought for someone other than himself. He had protected his family. 1 year later, on Christmas Eve, snow fell in gentle swirls around Abner Thorne's ranch. Inside the cabin, the transformation was complete. It was no longer a sparse shelter, but a home, filled with the warmth of a crackling fire and the scent of pine. Colorful quilts lay folded on the chairs, and Mai's drawings were tacked to the walls. Abner watched as Mai, now a healthy and confident 8-year-old, placed a hand-carved star atop their small Christmas tree. This past year, she had not only brought life back to his home, but she had also brought him back to life. He had slowly re-engaged with the community, serving on the school board and using his skills to help his neighbors. The mountain of his grief had not vanished, but Mai had shown him a path to climb it. "Grandpa," Mai said, her bright eyes reflecting the firelight. "Are you happy now?" The question was simple, but it held the weight of a lifetime. For so long, happiness had been a foreign concept, a memory from a life that felt like it belonged to another man. "Yes," he said, the word coming out with a certainty that surprised him. "I am happy." "Are you?" "Very happy," she replied, curling up beside him on the hearth. "I have a home. And I have you." She had saved him as surely as he had saved her. That lonely little girl in the alley had reminded him that love was worth the risk of loss, that family was worth fighting for, and that even the most broken hearts could learn to heal. Outside, the snow blanketed the world in a peaceful silence. Grandfather and granddaughter sat together in the warmth of their home, two souls who had found each other in the darkness and built a family, not from blood and bone alone, but from the powerful magic of a second chance.